ब्रह्मा बोले चतुर्मुखे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे महादेवा पंचमुखे राम राम हरे हरे ब्रह्मा बोले चतुर्मुखे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे महादेवा पंचमुखे राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय गुरुदेव जय जय गुरुदेव नित्य गौर हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल। Hare Krishna to all the devotees. Thank you for joining today's morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. We'll start first by offering prayers, asking permission from the Parampara to discuss the spiritual subjects. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagarjatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam tam sajivam sadvaitam savadutam parijana sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari वृषभानु सुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधारा श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Please recite after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om
Om Namo
Bhagavate
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya भगवती उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवती न इष्टिकी कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय च नंदगोपकुमाराय गोविंदाय नमो नमः। नमः पंकजनाभाय नमः पंकजमालिने नमः पंकजनेत्राय नमस्ते पंकजांग्रहे नमो महावदन्याय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः। नमः ब्राह्मण देवाय गो ब्राह्मणाहिताय च जगद्दिताय कृष्णाय गोविंदाय नमो नमः। नमो ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण प्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी इति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधारा श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 रामा राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 रामा राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 रामा राम राम हरे हरे मुखं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनवतारणं आनन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्य ईश्वरम् उमपवित्र पवित्रो वा सर्वावस्थं गतोऽपि वा यस्मरेत् पुण्डरीकाक्षं सभयाभयन्तरं शुचिः श्रीविष्णु श्रीविष्णु श्रीविष्णु। हरे कृष्णा।
हरे कृष्णा प्रभु, दंडवत प्रणाम।
दंडवत प्रणाम प्रभु। हरे कृष्णा। We will start, Prabhu. We have only got a few participants here, but we can start. So let me first start by sharing my screen. Huh? Just hold on for 1 minute. I hope you are able to see my screen.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. I request everyone to please mute yourself. Hare Krishna to all the devotees. Welcome to this Sunday Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today we will be discussing, we'll continue with the chapter on the history of the life of Ajamila. I will be covering the last section, which is the fall down of Ajamila. But before I start, I want to thank Lilananda Prabhu specifically for giving me this opportunity to take this class. I'm no way qualified to take this class. So if I'm making any mistakes or anything that I'm missing, please forgive me for that. That is fully on my account only. I will start by first sharing a quick overview of what we have read so far in this. So we have already covered 5 cantos. We are now in the 6th canto, first chapter, which is the history of the life of Ajamila. On the screen, I'm showing you the summary of the chapter from the Subodhini. So it starts with actually Parikshit Maharaj's further inquiries. So he says that you have described about Pravritti Marga, Nivritti Marga, hellish life, the first Manvantara, dynasties, and cosmology. So he is very curious to know how can humans be saved from entering hellish life. To this, Shukadev Goswami replies, first he tries to test Parikshit Maharaj, and then he establishes that bhakti is the sole path. So he first talks about karmakandic atonement, but Parikshit Maharaj rejects it. And then the story dovetails to the part wherein the Ajamila's story is discussed. Prior to that, of course, Sukadev Goswami says that devotees never see Yamadutas even in their dreams. So Ajamila's story is then covered, wherein in a very brief manner, wherein Ajamila's marriage is discussed with a prostitute, the sinful acts that he commits, and then how he continues to do this for almost 88 years. He reaches a ripe old age of 88, and then that is when death confronts him. And during this time, he's extremely attached to his youngest son, Narayana. And during the last class, we heard about the conversation. So actually, when he sees death, he sees the Yamadutas also coming. But since he calls out to his son's name, Narayana, the Vishnu Dutas also arrive. And there, at that time, a conversation transpires between the Yamadutas and the Vishnu Dutas. So the Vishnu Dutas come in, they arrive, and first of all, they stop the Yamadutas from snatching the soul of Ajamila. To which the Yamadutas are curious, they inquire, who are you? You are appearing wonderful. Why are you obstructing us? And the Vishnu Dutas then reply, asking the Yamadutas to explain to them what is dharma, what is adharma, and the process and the recipients of punishment. It's not that they are not aware of it. This is more for the readers of the Bhagavatam, that we need to understand what is dharma, what is adharma also. And then the Yamudutas continue in their reply to the Vishnudutas. They discuss that dharma is prescribed in the Vedas, that Narayana is the supreme controller, and everyone under the modes of nature, in material nature, is punishable in proportion to their adharma, as confirmed by the witnesses, that is the sun, moon, etc. There are various witnesses that are discussed. So basically, whatever acts we are committing or we are doing in our daily lives, we can never escape from this. We need to keep that in mind, actually. So we are always, being observed constantly under a 24/7 surveillance. We are constantly being observed. And then towards the last section of that conversation, essentially, we discuss about, what is the possibility of atonement, and that liberation can be achieved by associating with the Lord and his devotees. So we stopped at verse number 53. I will continue with verse number 54 and 55 to conclude that section on the conversation between the Yamadutas and Vishnudutas. And then we'll get into an interesting section. It's in a story format, the fall down of Ajamila. So basically, the Yamadutas will then narrate the story of Ajamila, how Ajamila fell down, right? And what happened in that story. So it's a story narrative. It's very easy. So we'll be able to proceed through it fast. I will request all of you to please make your own reflections through this story. Yesterday, as I was preparing for this class, I actually also had some opportunity to do that. So maybe we'll definitely have some time at the end of the class. We can share our reflections also during that. So let's start now with verse number 53. Nahi kaschit kshanam api jatu tishtati karmakrit karyate hya avasya karma gunai swabhavikair balat. Anybody wants to read the translation? Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu. Please. Hare Krishna. Please.
Go ahead, Prabhu, please.
Yes. Go ahead, Prabhu. Madhusudan Prabhu, please go ahead.
Okay. Translation by His Grace. Not a single living entity can remain unengaged even for a moment. One must act by his natural tendency according to the three modes of material nature, because this natural tendency forcibly makes him work in a particular way. Can I go ahead with the purport also, Prabhu?
Yes, please read the purport also, Prabhu. You can see the purport, Prabhu. Please read it.
Yes, Prabhu. The Swabhavika, or one's natural tendency, is the most important factor in action. One's natural tendency is to serve because a living entity is an eternal servant of God. The living entity wants to serve because of his forgetfulness of his relationship with the Supreme Lord. He serves under the modes of material nature and manufactures various modes of service, such as socialism, humanitarianism, and altruism. However, one should be enlightened in the tenets of Bhagavad Gita and accept the instruction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that one give up all natural tendencies for material service under different names and take to the service of the Lord. One's original natural tendency is to act in Krishna consciousness because one's real nature is spiritual. The duty of a human being is to understand that Since he is essentially spirit, he must abide by the spiritual tendency and not be carried away by material tendencies. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has therefore sung.
Prabhu, please
Mayara
proceed.
Vase,
You can just go.
Mayara Vase, Yacha Vase, Kacha Abadu Bhai. My dear brothers, you are being carried away by the waves of material energy and are suffering in many miserable conditions. Sometimes you are drowning in the wave of material nature, and sometimes you are tossed like a swimmer struggling in the ocean. As confirmed by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, this tendency to be battered by the waves of Maya can be changed to one's original natural tendency, which is spiritual. When the living entity comes to understand that he is eternally Krishna Dasa, a servant of God Krishna, Krishna Dasa e Viswasa Karletu Ara Dukha Nai. If instead of serving Maya under different names, one turns his service attitude towards the Supreme Lord, he is then safe and there is no more difficulty. If one returns to his original natural tendency in the human form of life, by understanding the perfect knowledge given by Krishna himself in the Vedic literature, one's life is successful.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Prabhu, for reading the purport. It's a beautiful purport, actually, which reminds us that what is our constitutional position. I think this is a very, very fundamental thing that we have been constantly reiterating. I think in every class we reiterate what is our constitution position, right? Which is we are the servants of God. But we have forgotten that. And why have we forgotten that? Is because we have come in contact with material nature. So the moment you are born in this material body, and you take a birth in this material body, and you are there in this material nature under the influence of Maya, you will forget this constitutional position. So as Prabhupada rightly points out, one's original natural tendency is to act in Krishna consciousness because one's real nature is spiritual. And the duty of the human being is to understand that since he is essentially spirit, he must abide by the spiritual tendency and not be carried away by material tendencies. It is easier said than done because Maya is at work 24/7. Radhanath Maharaj has said in one of his lectures that Maya is constantly working 24/7, 365 days a year, 311 trillion years in that life of Brahma, constantly at work. And the only job is to target all the souls, jivas that are there, and ensure that they fall under the illusion of Maya. That is how hard Maya is working. So if we are not conscious, if we are not Krishna conscious, we will become Maya conscious. So there are only two options that you have. Either we surrender to Krishna or we surrender to Maya. And in today's world, most of us are surrendering to Maya most of the time. As devotees, at least we take out some time to immerse ourselves in spiritual topics, in discussing scriptures, in doing our Mangalarti, in doing our sadhana. And during those moments, at least, we are coming in some kind of contact with Krishna. Outside of that, there's a huge difficulty for us to remember Krishna at every moment, as we will see in the reason why Ajamila fell down. He was a super pious Brahmana. Why should such a person fall down? So let's discuss text 54 now. Labdhva nimittam avyaktam vyakta vyaktam bhavatyuta yatha yoni yatha bijam swabhavena baliyasha. Translation: the fruitive activities a living being performs, whether pious or impious, are the unseen cause for the fulfillment of his desires. This unseen cause is the root for the living entity's different bodies. Because of his intense desire, the living entity takes birth in a particular family and receives a body which is either like that of his mother or like that of his father. The gross and subtle bodies are created according to his desire. And as a devotee, any devotee wants to read the purport? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Shall I read?
Yes, Mataji, Dhanavada. Please read.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The gross body is a product of the subtle body, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 8.6. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajate ante kalevaram tam tam ivaiti kaunteya sada tad bhava bhavitaha. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. The atmosphere of the subtle body at the time of death is created by the activities of the gross body. Thus, the gross body acts during one's lifetime and the subtle body acts at the time of death. The subtle body, which is called linga, the body of desire, is the background for the development of a particular type of gross body, which is either like that of one's mother or like that of one's father. According to the Rig Veda, if at the time of sex, the secretions of the mother are more profuse than those of the father, the child will receive a female body. And if the secretions of the father are more profuse than those of the mother, the child will receive a male body. These are the subtle laws. These are the subtle laws of nature, which act according to the desire of the living entity. If a human being is taught to change his subtle body by developing a consciousness of Krishna, at the time of death, the subtle body will create a gross body in which he will be a devotee of Krishna. Or if he is still more perfect, he will not take another material body, but will immediately get a spiritual body and thus returns home, back to Godhead. This is the process of transmigration of the soul. Therefore, instead of trying to unite human society through pacts for sense gratification that can never be achieved, it is clearly desirable to teach people how to become Krishna conscious and return home back to Godhead. This is true now and indeed at any time.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. This is
Hare
what
Krishna.
we are also doing, which is teaching people, preaching, through this preaching, how to become Krishna conscious. And through that route, getting back to Godhead. So we are all aware that, the soul, we are not the body, we are the soul. And the soul transmigrates from one body to another body. And at the time of quitting the body, whatever is remembering, and whatever environment has been created around that gross and subtle body, the next life is accordingly, it is determined. So this is reinforced here in this particular verse. Now we'll continue to the last verse of particular section, text 55. Esha prakriti sangena purushasya viparyaya asit sa eva na chirad isha sangat viliyate. Translation: since the living entity is associated with material nature, he is in an awkward position. But if in human form of life he is taught how to associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his devotee, this position can be overcome. So over here, the Yamadutas are basically telling that atonement is possible if one associates with the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his devotee. This position can be overcome. So over here in the purport, Prabhupada says, in summary, the living entity is an eternal servant of God, but he comes to the material world and is bound by material conditions because of his desire to lord it over matter. So again, reinforcing that we are the spiritual soul, spirit soul, and we are coming to the material world because of our desire to lord it over matter. And one can go back by association. So thus one ends the tribulation caused by his association with material energy when one associates with the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his devotees. That is about changing our consciousness from material consciousness to Krishna consciousness. Now we'll move to the section on the fall down of Ajamila. I'll take a pause here. Can someone share what does the word Ajamila mean? Anyone knows what Ajamila means? So I tried to look up. I was also curious to find out what Ajamila means. And I found out actually there was one explanation given by one of the devotees. So I'm assuming that I'm following that. He gave that there are two possible meanings, two possible interpretations. One is indisciplined and the other is devotee of Vishnu. So I don't know whether we can combine it and say an indisciplined devotee of Vishnu, or I don't know whether a devotee of Vishnu can be indisciplined, but that's what it is. It is just a kind of a bit of a fun fact. So these first two verses that we see in this section on the fall down of Ajamila, so Yamadutas are now going to be describing the qualities of Ajamila. And let's quickly read through this. Ayam hi Shruta Sampanna Srila Vritta Gunalaya Drita Vrato Mridurdvadanta Satyavan Mantra Vichuchihi Gurvagnatiti Vriddhanam Shushushur Anahankritaha Sarvabhuta Surit Sadhur Mitavag Anasuyakaha. Translation. In the beginning, this Brahmana named Ajamila studied all the Vedic literatures. He was a reservoir of good character, good conduct, and good qualities. Firmly established in executing all the Vedic injunctions, he was very mild and gentle, and he kept his mind and senses under control. Furthermore, he was always truthful. He knew how to chant the Vedic mantras, and he was also very pure. Ajamila was very respectful to his spiritual master, the fire god, guests, and the elderly members of his household. Indeed, he was free from false prestige. He was upright, benevolent to all living entities, and well behaved. He would never speak nonsense or envy anyone. Hare Krishna. Can someone read the purport? Hare Krishna.
Okay, can I read?
Yes, Prabhu. Please.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The order carriers of Yamaraja and Yamadutas are explaining the factual position of the piety and impiety and how a living entity is entangled in this material world. Describing the history of Ajamila's life, the Yamadutas relate that that in the beginning he was learned scholar of Vedic literature. He was well behaved, neat and clean, and very kind to everyone. In fact, he had all the good qualities. In other words, he was like a perfect Brahmana. A Brahmana is expected to be perfectly pious, to follow all the regulative principles, and to have all the good qualities. The symptoms of piety are explained in these verses. Srila Varara.
Veera Raghava.
Srila Veera Raghava Acharya comments that Dhritavrata means Dhritam Vratam Shriti Sangha Rahiyatmaka Brahmacharya Rupam. In other words, Ajamila followed the rules and regulations of celibacy as a perfect brahmachari and was very soft and truthful, clean and pure. How he fell down in spite of all the qualities and thus came to be threatened with punishment by Yamaraja will be described in the following verse.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
So I have a quiz question for you, Prabhu, now and for everyone, is that when I was reading this, I felt like Ajamila had the most brilliant qualities. He was a reservoir of good character, conduct, qualities, followed all the Vedic injunctions, was respectful to his spiritual master. He kept his mind and senses under control. He was very mild and gentle. How then did he fall down? Why? Anybody? Any thoughts?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Yes.
Just like Jadabharata. Jadabharata was also a exalted devotee. He was detached from his wife and that kingdom and everything, lavish life. But he fell for a mere deer, and he got the deer. This maybe it is because of his karma, or it is the pastly. It is a Leela of a supreme God to show how the
Everything
Maya
is a
can.
Leela, Mataji. So everything is Leela, but I'm looking for another response, Mataji. And it's something else I'm looking for. Thank you, Mataji. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna,
Prabhuji,
Prabhuji.
yeah,
Prabhu. Yes, Akanjan Prabhu.
yeah, maybe
Prabhu, yes, please speak. You can speak, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
I don't know, Prabhuji, but yes, sight, in the sense you had to see that particular woman. So, in the sense, his sense control was, he's lost his sense control actually with the sight of that woman and all. And then he had a desire to enjoy that eventually made him to fall down actually.
That happened, Prabhu. Correct. But if you read this verse, here's a person who was a perfect Brahmana. He had kept his mind and senses under control. He was following everything, Prabhu. So,
Okay.
what hope do we have then? So,
Maybe association.
yes, Prabhu. Association. Beautiful. I think, so I was listening to this lecture, and His Grace Radhika Vallabh Prabhu has actually mentioned good qualities without Krishna consciousness are ineffective. He gives a beautiful analogy he uses. He says that I'm sure, in some of these hotels you go, they arrange flowers on the bed. That's what I wanted. He didn't use that analogy, but he used an analogy of petals, rose petals arranged together in some kind of a form, in a garland form. Like, you go to a hotel, they arrange they arrange these rose petals and flowers in some design as a flower, as a heart, and all that. But you imagine you just bring a fan and you blow air. What will happen to all the petals? They will all get dispersed. They will all get distorted completely, right? Now, he says, good qualities without Krishna consciousness are like petals without a thread. They will disperse easily. So no matter how much ever good qualities we develop, if we are failing to acknowledge our constitutional position, right, that first of all, we are not the body, we are the soul, but our constitutional position is to be the servant of Krishna. If we fail to acknowledge that, whatever piety we acquire in this life will be like these petals without a thread. The slightest disturbance that is going to come, in this case of Ajamila, that prostitute woman came and stood before him, or whatever it was, he saw that scene and he completely went into illusion. And we'll read further also, during that time he tries. As much as he tries, he is not able to control. So our reflection for us is to cultivate Krishna consciousness. Prabhuji's and Mataji's, please cultivate it, please nurture it. I think this Bhakti Lata beach that we are getting out here and we have received in this Gachibowli Satsang, let us take care of that and let us bind ourselves to that, so that we are able to sustain our virtuous qualities also. All of us have virtuous qualities, but if we are not bringing Krishna into the center of our actions that we do, we read earlier, we have to act. There is no way out. When we are born in this material world, when we are coming into this material world, into this quarantine, there is no two ways, no choice. We have to act. There is action. We can either do action in the service of Maya or action in the service of Krishna. That is something that we need to decide. That's our free level. So please keep that in mind. Let us continue reading. Now we'll go to the next three verses we'll read it together, where we'll see about what happened, Ajamila's encounter with lust. Ekada sauvanam yataha पितृसन्देश कृद्विजः आदाय ततद् आवृत्तः फलपुष्प समित कुशान् ददर्श कामिनं काञ्चिः चूद्रं सह भुजिष्यया Pitva cha madhum maireyam madaghurnitanettraya mattaya vishlatan nivya vypetam nirapatrapam क्रीडन्तम् अनुगायन्तम् असन्तम् अनयान्तिके.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Can
Hare
I
Krishna. Yes, Prabhu. Please read. Please read the translation and purport also.
Yes, Prabhuji. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Once this Brahmana Ajamila, following the orders of his father, went to the forest to collect fruits, flowers, and two kinds of grass called the Samit and Kusha. On the way home, he came upon a Shudra, a very lusty fourth class man who was shamelessly embracing and kissing a prostitute. The Sudra was smiling, singing, and enjoying as if this was a proper behavior. Both the Sudra and the prostitute were drunk. The prostitute's eyes were rolling in intoxication, and her dress had become loose. Such was the condition in which Ajamila saw them. Purport. While traveling along the public ways, Ajamila came upon a fourth class man and a prostitute who are vividly described here. Drunkenness was something manifest even in ages, although not very frequent in this age or frequently. In this age of Kali, however, such sin is to be seen everywhere. So, for people all over the world have become shameless. Long ago, when he saw the scene of the drunken Sudra and the prostitute, Ajamila, who was a perfect brahmachari, was affected. Nowadays, such a sin is visible in so many places, and we must consider the position of a brahmachari student who sees such behavior. For a brahmachari to remain steady is very difficult unless he is extremely strong in following the regulative principles. Nevertheless, if one takes to Krishna consciousness very seriously, he can withstand the provocation created by sin. In our Krishna consciousness movement, we prohibit illicit sex, intoxication, meat eating, and gambling. In Kali Yuga, a drunk, half-naked woman embracing a drunk man is a very common sight, especially in the Western countries. The restraining oneself after seeing such things is very difficult. Nevertheless, if by the grace of Krishna, one adhere to the regulative principles and the chant the Hare Krishna mantra, Krishna will certainly protect him. Indeed, Krishna says that his devotees is never vanquished. Kaunteya pratijaneti name bhakta pranashyati. Therefore, all the disciples practicing Krishna consciousness should obediently follow the regulative principles and remain fixed in the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Then there is need to be no fear. Otherwise, one's position is very dangerous, especially in this Kali Yuga. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yes, we need the grace of Krishna. That's why Prabhupada says, if by the grace of Krishna, without that grace, of course, we will not be chanting nor will be attending this particular session that we have every weekend. We are having these classes that we are having of Srimad Bhagavatam, right? So the 18 people today who are there on this call have got the grace of Krishna to attend this also. So, and this is bringing us closer. So if one takes to Krishna consciousness very seriously, he can withstand any provocation that is there. Please keep that in mind. So over here, so essentially, what happens is that, how do these bad qualities develop, first of all, right? So now we are seeing that here, this is perfect example of how Maya is working tirelessly to bind souls in material existence. The scene that Ajamila is seeing over there is a perfect example of how Maya is always at work trying to bind the materially conditioned souls. Okay. Radhika Vallabh Prabhu, His Grace Radhika Vallabh Prabhu also, he uses this example of a camera roll, which is a nice example, I thought. He says that A camera roll, when you expose it to sunlight, right, the camera roll is destroyed. But when a camera roll is kept in the dark room, that is when the camera roll can be developed. Similarly, he says bad qualities develop in secrecy in this dark room, but are vanquished the moment you expose it to sunlight. There was another reference that I found out was from the Srimad Bhagavatam. This chapter 31 of the third canto, 37th verse, which says that amongst all kinds of living entities begotten by Brahma, namely men, demigods, and animals, none but the sage Narayana is immune to the attraction of Maya in the form of a woman. So let's keep that in mind. None of us, except sage Narayana, nobody, except Narayana Rishi, nobody is immune to this attraction of Maya in the form of a woman. So we are all suspect to fall if we get exposed, and we are not hooking on to catching on to the other side, which is being in Krishna consciousness. In Bhagavad Gita also, chapter 7, the 14th verse, he says, Krishna says, Daivi Yesha Gunamahi Mama Maya Duratyaya Mameva Ye Prapadyante Mayam Etam Tarantite. He says, this divine energy of mind, which is Maya, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome. But those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. He is himself, so Krishna is giving the solution also. He's saying, this energy of mind is very, very difficult to overcome. Don't try to fight it. There is only one way in which you can overcome it is to surrender unto me. So we have to constantly keep this in our mind. We have to constantly keep this in our mind. And this, what does this mean? What does this mean for us? Is that we need to regularly expose your mind to Krishna consciousness to prevent the development of bad qualities. Otherwise, these bad qualities will develop. In Gita chapter 9:14, he says, Satatam Kirtayam Tomam. He says, always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me. These great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. So that is the solution again. So we have to be Krishna conscious always. Sorry, Hare Krishna. Yeah. So let's go back to reading the verse number 61, wherein we'll read a bit more about Ajamila's fall. Drishtva tam kamaliptena bahuna parirambhitam jagama hrichaya vasham sahashaiva vimohitaha. Translation: the Shudra, his arm decorated with turmeric powder, was embracing the prostitute. When Ajamila saw her, the dormant lusty desires in his heart awakened, and in illusion, he fell under their control. So we need to recognize here the destructive power of lust and the importance of adhering to spiritual principles. So I'll just go to this particular flowchart with Gauranga Darshan Prabhu has shared in his classes. So I felt it's very useful how it all starts. He says, so Ajamila's fall down, first it started by, I hope you're able to all see my screen. Just 1 minute, it's coming up. He says he saw the illicit affair. That's what we read in the earlier two verses, right? And in this verse we are reading now, his lust is awakened. So this is what happens. That typically this is the process of fall down when you are not holding on or latching on to Krishna consciousness. So we'll go back. Now what happens after this, right? So in text 62, we see Stambhayan Atmanatmanam Yavat Sattvam Yathashrutam Nashashaka Shashaka Samadhatum Manomadana Vepitum. Does someone want to read the translation and purport? Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhu, I will read.
Yes, Prabhu, please proceed.
So translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada ki jai. As far as possible, he patiently tried to remember the instructions of the Shastras, not even to see a woman. With the help of this knowledge and his intellect, he tried to control his lusty desires. But because of the force of Cupid within his heart, he failed to control his mind. Purport: unless one is very strong in knowledge, patience, and proper bodily, mental, and intellectual behavior, controlling one's lusty desires is extremely difficult. Thus, after seeing a man embracing a young woman and particularly doing everything required for sex life, even a fully qualified Brahmana, as described above, could not control his lusty desires and restrain himself from pursuing them. Because of the force of materialistic life, to maintain self-control is extremely difficult unless one is specifically under the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead through devotional service.
Hare Krishna. We'll read text 63 also now, and then we'll have a short discussion. Tannimitta smara vyaja grahagrasto vichetanaha tameva manasa dhyayan swadharma viram ramaha. Hare Krishna. Any other devotee can read the translation?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. In the same way that the sun and moon are eclipsed by a lower planet, the Brahmana lost all his good sense. Taking advantage of this situation, he always thought of the prostitute, and within a short time he took her as a servant in his house and abandoned all the regulative principles of Brahmana. Purport: by speaking this verse, Sukadev Goswami want to impress upon the mind of the reader that Ajamila's exalted position as a Brahmana was vanquished by his association with the prostitute. So much so that he forgot all his Brahmanical activities. Nevertheless, at the end of his life, by chanting the 4 syllables of the name Narayana, he was saved from the gravest danger of falling down. Swalpam apyasya dharmasya trayato mahato bhayat. Even a little devotional service can save one from the greatest danger. Prabhuji, can I read only the highlighted portion, Prabhuji?
You can read the full Mataji, no problem. Or you can read highlighted also, up to you, Mataji. The highlighted is the more important one. So you can read the highlighted.
Okay, Prabhuji. Therefore, in Bhagavad Gita, it is advised that one not forget the chanting of the holy name, even for a moment. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dridavratah. There are so many dangers in this material world that one may fall down from an exalted position at any time. Yet, if one keeps himself always pure and steady by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, he will be safe without a doubt. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So here, the 2 verses. The first verse we see that, he tried. As far as possible, he patiently tried to remember. But what happened? Nothing happened. He tried to remember the instructions of the Shastras, not even to see a woman. With the help of his knowledge and his intellect, he tried to control his lusty desires. But because of the force of Cupid within his heart, he failed to control his mind. So when you see this particular flowchart over here, it started with the sight, with his eye seeing, that awakened lust, right? Which illusioned him first. It bewildered him. Then he tried to take control. He tried to remember Shastra and couldn't restrain. He was forced by Cupid and he lost all good sense, just like a Grahana. Right? So they say Prahlad Maharaj was influenced by Krishna Grahi. That is one when he was born, and therefore he was constantly thinking about Krishna and about how to serve him. But here it seems like Ajamila is impacted by some lusty graha. Right? So that's what in the next verse, that's what we read in verse number 63. So he thinks of her, he brings her home, he gives up the dharma of a Brahmana then also, right? Now, why is this happening? Prabhujis and Matajis, anybody? Why is this happening? He tried as much, right? He was a qualified Brahmana. He tried very hard. It didn't work.
I think, Prabhu, what scripture says that if one keeps themselves always pure, which is very, very difficult, right? So the only way to keep ourselves pure is through association, right? So when you say pure, talking about Krishna, discussing about Krishna, devotion service, that is what translates to pure in a sense. If that is lacking, then obviously mind becomes impure. Then obviously we tend to get attracted to all nonsensical things. Just 2 cents, Prabhu.
Yeah, no, very valid, Prabhu. See, Prabhu, attachment and detachment are two sides of the same coin. So if we want to get detached to a lower taste, we have to attach ourselves to a higher taste. If we don't attach ourselves to the higher taste, there is no way we will be able to detach ourselves from the lower taste. And that higher taste is Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, association, Sadhu Sangha. Doing that, is the higher taste. Then that is the only way we can detach ourselves from the lower taste. And then that is when we are completely under the shelter of Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita 15.15, Krishna says, Sarvasya cha mridi sannivishto matta smritir jnanam apohanam chala. He says that he's seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So in this particular case, Ajamila has tried. He's trying extremely hard. He's one of the most intellectual scholars. He's one of the most evolved Brahmanas. He's trying. Nothing is of avail because he was not in a Krishna-centered, conscious-centered life. He was not leading that. It was more in a more kind of, as a Jnani, he was living that life. He was not living it under Krishna consciousness. Though he was so much pious, so much piety that he had done, Krishna was nowhere at the center of all that piety he had accumulated, all the pious credits that he had accumulated. So we need to be very, very careful, Prabhujis and Matajis. That lesson for us is that we have to be extremely careful because Jnana and Dharma cannot protect him. As we are seeing here in the case of Ajamila, Jnana and Dharma could not protect Ajamila. So only Namabhasa, afterwards when he realizes, he goes to Haridwar and he takes the shelter of Krishna and Bhakti. That is when he is able to get back to Godhead. So clearly here also it is being reinforced. Once again, the message is coming out very clearly that Bhakti is superior. Please keep that in mind. Bhakti is superior. And when you take the shelter of Bhakti, when you follow the Bhakti mark, automatically everything else is coming along with that. So Jnana, Dharma, everything will come. So in the next now verse, what we will see in verse number 64 is, what does Ajamila do now? So he takes it even one further step. He takes it. Tameva toshayamasa pitrenarthena yavata gramyair manoramai kamai prasideta yatha tatha. Hare Krishna. May I request one of the devotees to please read the translation and the purport? It's a short one.
Can I read, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu, please read.
Translation and purport by Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. This is, this is which one, Prabhu? Which verse is this?
64, Prabhu. Thus Ajamila began spending.
Okay. Thus Ajamila began spending whatever money he had inherited from his father to satisfy the prostitute with various material presentations so that she would remain pleased with him. He gave up all his Brahmanical activities to satisfy the prostitute. Purport. There are many instances throughout the world in which even a purified person being attracted by a prostitute spends all the money he has inherited. Prostitute hunting is so abominable that the desire for sex with a prostitute can ruin one's character, destroy one's exalted position, and plunder all one's money. Therefore, illicit sex is strictly prohibited. One should be satisfied with his married wife, for even a slight deviation will create havoc. A Krishna-conscious Grihastha should always remember this. He should always be satisfied with one wife and be peaceful simply by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Otherwise, At any moment, he may fall down from his good position, as exemplified in the case of Ajamila. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. So here we are seeing that this man now, he had inherited money and fortune from his father. He is now spending that. Where is he spending it? Instead of using it for the service of Krishna, he is using it for material indulgence. He's satisfying the prostitute with that through various material presentations. And Prabhupada in his purport is talking about that the fact that, being lusty is one thing. It is wrong. It is wrong to be lusty. But when you're lusty for a specific thing or for a specific person, it is even more dangerous. And he's saying that it can ruin once. He's giving 3 things that it can ruin. It can ruin your character. It can destroy your position, even if it is extremely an exalted position, and it can plunder all your money. Now we have seen this. We have numerous examples of this happening in today's world. In Kali Yuga, we keep on hearing in news also, when people are indulging in such kind of behavior, how it is the total character assassination is happening. They are all exalted people, very, very big posts. They are falling down from that, right? And all the money, wealth is getting plundered through all legal cases, etc. Also, we are seeing that. It's so true. So again, it's a warning for us that, we need to take the right shelter. Again, Prabhuji's and Mataji's Maya is 24/7. It's at work. The moment you leave the hand of Krishna, Maya is going to grab you and take you away. Even for that one split second. I know it is very, very difficult, but that is what we need to get to, is that we need to be so careful, is that as long as we are in this material world, Maya is constantly watching. Acha, okay, you have now switching off, you're letting down your guard. Now let me bowl your yorker and get you out. That is what it is. We'll continue reading. There are 3 more verses, and then we can continue the discussion. So we'll try to finish these 3 verses, and then we'll have a discussion. Vipram swabharyam apraudham kule mahati lambitam visasarja chirat papaha swaiриnya papanga viddhadi. Translation: because his intelligence was pierced by lustful glance of the prostitute, the victimized Brahmana, Ajamila, engaged in sinful acts in her association. He gave up the company of his very beautiful young wife, who came from a very respectable Brahmana family. Purport: customarily, everyone is eligible to inherit his father's property, and Ajamila also inherited the money of his father. But what did he do with the money? Instead of engaging the money in the service of Krishna, he engaged it in the service of a prostitute. Therefore, he was condemned and was punishable by Yamaraja. How did this happen? He was victimized by the dangerous, lustful glance of a prostitute. Text 66. Yatastatascho paninye nyayato anyayato dhanam bhava rasya kutumbinya kutumbam mandadhir ayam. Translation: although born of a Brahmana family, this rascal, bereft of intelligence because of the prostitute's association, earned money somehow or other, regardless of whether properly or improperly, and used it to maintain the prostitute's sons and daughters. I'll pause here because it's an interesting thing that Prabhupada, uses the word rascal over here. He says, although born of a Brahmana family, this rascal, he's calling him a rascal here. But we also know that he later glorifies him, saying that, he gets the mercy of Narayana. So I think one clear thing over here is that we need to reflect over here is that there are lessons to be learned for us from this, right? Padma Mataji had mentioned earlier about Jada Bharata. story. Like this in Srimad Bhagavatam, there are many other stories also, like Ayati is also there. So there are many other stories that are there from where we learn lessons, right? Even in Parikshit Maharaj's case, where he throws the snake, right? The dead snake. So there are lessons from all of these characters. So we need to be very, very careful that we, the sadhakas, don't insult them. We should not be insulting. Rather, we need to learn the lessons. I'm forgetting it. Gauranga Darshan Prabhu says these three things that, when somebody does something wrong, you should view it very objectively, right? You should, if it's something, it's a sin, you should treat it that way. It is sinful. Second thing he says is that you should not be respectful still. You should not decry that person, and you should not insult that person. And the third is that you should take away what are the future learnings for us from this particular situation. So in this situation, in this particular scene that Ajamila has fallen, there are so many learnings for us in terms of, how we can prevent ourselves from falling into such a situation. That we need to keep in mind. Let's continue verse 67 and then the last verse 68, and then we can have a short discussion after that. Yadasau shastram ullanghya svairacharyati garhitah avartata chiram kalam aghayur ashuchir malat. Translation: this Brahmana irresponsibly spent his long lifetime transgressing all the rules and regulations of the holy scriptures, living extravagantly and eating food prepared by a prostitute. Therefore, he is full of sins, he is unclean, and is addicted to forbidden activities. So the Yamadutas are now kind of, putting the nails into the coffin, saying that this is why we need to take this guy's soul out and take him to Yamaraj, he's saying. So in the purport, Prabhupada says, food prepared by an unclean, sinful man or woman, especially a prostitute, is extremely infectious. Ajamila ate such food, and therefore he was subject to be punished by Yamaraj. There is also a lesson here for us that, why we keep insisting that we should eat always, we should eat prasada. We should eat prasadam. Right now in this Kali Yuga, it's so difficult for us, especially when we are working. Individuals, we are going out, we have to go for a dinner. That the other day I was telling Lilananda Prabhu also, sometimes we are not able to avoid it. I have to go for a dinner with officials, company officials. And in that dinner, we have to eat something. Otherwise, it's quite disrespectful. But how is that food getting prepared? How is it? Right? And these are the things that, we have to increase our sadhana on the other sides, to ensure that we remain, because that consciousness is coming through. In one of his Leela lectures, I think Lilananda Prabhu has mentioned that, when food is prepared in machines, it is getting the consciousness of those machines that is there. So how a food is prepared, with what cleanliness it's prepared, with what consciousness it's prepared. The other day I was at the temple. In here we get the opportunity to cook for Jagannath in the temple. So I was cooking in the temple with another devotee. And at that point of time, unfortunately, both of us, suddenly there was this discussion about elections in India. Somebody brought it up. And we were talking, so we started discussing that. And at that point, actually, the head priest somehow has come in. So the Jagannath has his ways of ensuring that we stop this prajalpa in his kitchen. So at that point of time, this head priest comes in, Balakrishna Prabhu comes in and immediately he tells us, Prabhu, please stop discussing all this prajalpa in this is Jagannath's kitchen. You're not allowed to discuss all these things. So we have to be in full Krishna consciousness. Usually we are always chanting, or we are listening to kirtans or lectures of Prabhupada there. But I'm just telling you that how important it is that when you're saying prepared by cleanliness, it's not about just the physical cleanliness, right? So Gauranga Darshan Prabhu says that you go to these dosa bandis, they use these jadus to clean the tawa, right? Those same jadus are maybe also being used to clean the floor. So one part is the physical cleanliness of the food, but the other part is this entire spiritual consciousness, the mental consciousness with which that food is being prepared. So it's the individual who's prepared it. Often we have seen these things, right? They say that mother's food tastes good, right? Even if it's the most simplest thing that is there, When you eat the food prepared by your mother, it is the tastiest food. Why is that? Because it's prepared with a consciousness of love over there, right? Similarly, this consciousness of food that we are consuming, so please keep that in your mind. It's also a lesson for us, is that we need to keep ourselves, our consciousness very clear and clean, and ensure that what we are intaking, what is being ingested into ourselves, not just what we are hearing and seeing, but what food we are intaking also. It's having not only being clean, it's taking care of the 4 regulative principles without onion, garlic, mushroom, and all those things, but also the consciousness with which the food is prepared is super, super important. The last verse, Tata enam dandapane sakasham krita kilbisham neshyamo krita nirvesham yatra dande na shuddhyati. Hare Krishna, can someone read the translation and the purport, please? Request someone.
I'll read.
Yes, Prabhu, please read.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada ki jai. This man Ajamila did not undergo atonement. Therefore, because of his sinful life, we must take him into the presence of Yamaraja for punishment. There, according to the extent of his sinful acts, he will be punished and thus purified. Purport. The Vishnudutas had forbidden the Yamadutas to take Ajamila to Yamaraja, and therefore the Yamadutas explained that taking such a man to Yamaraja was appropriate. Since Ajamila had not undergone atonement for his sinful acts, he was to be taken to Yamaraja to be purified. When a man commits murder, he becomes sinful, and therefore he also must be killed. Otherwise, after death, he must suffer many sinful reactions. Similarly, punishment by Yamaraja is a process of purification for the most abominable sinful persons. Therefore, the Yamadutas requested the Vishnudutas not to obstruct their taking Ajamila to Yamaraja. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 6th canto, 1st chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The History of the Life of Ajamila.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. So the Lord is so merciful. He's never wanting to let go of us. Even if we are facing some kind of a challenge in life, or a negative thing is happening in our life, that's we need to keep in mind. It's happening for our purification. And that's because we have committed some sins. We have acquired done some vikarma, we have acquired some karma from the past, which is getting nullified. That purification, because the Lord doesn't want to let go of us. He's extremely merciful. So when we are seeing it from a spiritual perspective, happiness is happiness, but also suffering is also happiness, is also the Lord's mercy. Both are happening because of the Lord's mercy. In a material lens, when we put on a material lens, when something is happy, we'll see that as, oh, this is Lord's mercy. When we are suffering, we'll not be thinking that it is Lord's mercy. We'll be thinking that there is some vindictiveness that is happening. But when we are spiritualized, when we are Krishna conscialized, that time we will be able to see both happiness and suffering as the Lord's mercy. So in chapter 3, one final reflection, actually chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita. So Arjuna Vacha, Atha kena prayukto yam papam charati purusha anicham api vashneya balad iva niyojita. Arjuna is asking, he's saying, O descendant of Vrishni, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? To this, Lord Krishna replies, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, Kama esha krodha esha rajo guna samudbhava mahasashano mahapapma vidyenam iha vairinam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. So please keep this in mind, that lust is the most dangerous enemy that is hovering around the corner for us. So in this case of Ajamila, how did Ajamila's fall down happen? Just a quick recap. he saw the affair. First, lust was awakened. And why did that lust get awakened? Because he was not in a Krishna consciousness state of mind. It caused bewilderment. And even though as much as he tried to control, he tried to remember the Shastras, he couldn't control himself. He was forced by Cupid, Madana Mohan. And then he lost all good sense, just like a grahana, like an eclipse. He continued to think of her, he bought her home, and then he gave up the dharma of a Brahmana. He tried to please her using his father's money. So whatever inheritance he had, he utilized that. Instead of using it for Krishna, he used it for presentations to be made to the prostitute. And as a result, he victimized his respectable wife. He had a beautiful wife. But as they say, when you are infatuated by a donkey, you will not be attracted even to an apsara. There's a Hindi proverb that goes, right? So Gauranga Darshan Prabhu was mentioning a Telugu proverb which goes like, you cross the 7 oceans and then you fall into a canal or a ditch and die, right? This is what has happened with Ajamila, one of the most respectable Brahmanas, had all the good qualities. He fell down and he victimized his wife. He gave up the respectable wife. And then after that, what did he do? He earned the money somehow through good means and bad means. He could not differentiate anymore now between good and bad, and started maintaining the prostitute and her children. And he irresponsibly spent the life, 88 years, transgressing Shastra. This long time passed, and that is when death comes to his door. So this is what happened. Now, Gauranga Prabhu actually gave this 10 steps. It's a very interesting 10 steps that Gauranga Prabhu has given on the fall down. He talks, but this 10 steps are not only applicable to fall down, it's also applicable to bhakti also. He says that this attraction starts with the eyes, and then you develop an intense attachment in the mind, and then you're extremely determined to achieve that, because of which you practically lose sleep, and you become emaciated through that, and you get disinterested in all the external things outside of that thing, part of attraction that you've got. You become so shameless, you become mad, you become stunned, and then ultimately you die. So Gauranga Prabhu says that this flow also is this how your bhakti progresses till you give up this material body and you go back to Godhead. It's the same pathway. So your detachment and attachment are again two sides of the same coin. Attraction to Krishna and attraction to Maya are again two sides of the same coin. If you're not attracted to Krishna, Maya is going to capture you. So with this, we'll take a pause here. Let us have some reflection and some discussion. I have first a question for all of you. Here we have seen in Ajamila's case, fall down that has happened. In the Bhagavatam, in our 6 cantos that we have read, there's another incidence of also fall down that happens, right? And the consequences are more severe. Can somebody share that? Hare Krishna. Anyone who wants to share that incident that has happened in the earlier cantos of Bhagavatam? Okay, I'll only share it. I'll share this example. So it is the example of Diti. So what happened in Diti's case? So she developed lust and she fell down, right? Now in Ajamila's case, he developed lust, he fell down, but he got a second chance. He atoned for it, right? In Diti's case, she fell down and she had 2 sons. In Ajamila's case, we saw that Ajamila's problem was essentially his problem only, internally to him and maybe a little bit to his family. But in Diti's case, the problems became the problem of the world, right? So anyone, why this has happened? So Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, they caused torment to the entire universe, including the Devatas. Any reflections? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandava Pranam.
Dandava Pranam.
Prabhuji, this Aditi one case, right? Hiranyakashipu or Hiranyakasha, right?
Yeah.
That is also God gave that boon, right? So that's why it happened. Can
Yeah,
we
Prabhu,
take
but the scale in which the consequences, right? In your lust has caused, so lust, the range of what I'm trying to say is the range of problems that it can cause. In Ajamila's cause, it caused problem to him and his family. But in the case of Diti, lust caused a problem which was far, far superior. The problem was caused to the entire universe.
yes, Prabhuji, that's true. But in that case, that lust is the only who propagated that one. That is, propagation is done by God only, right? Because they have to give the worth of this.
So yes, God sanctions, Prabhu.
Can we compare? That's why I just understand. Can we compare both example like this Ajamila's and this one?
So Gauranga Prabhu has actually given a nice, comparison he has given. So from that I've just put this in a tabular format. Does anyone wants to read it, or shall I read it?
One minute, Prabhuji, let me read.
Yes. Yeah.
Some mobile, but okay. Initial situation, cause of fall, enchanted by a prostitute. Prabhuji, first one, okay, sorry. Aspects in this is one. Initial situation, a virtuous Brahmana, Diti, wife of the great sage Kashyapa Muni. Cause of fall, enchanted by a prostitute, overcome by lust, forced union by Kashyapa Muni at an inappropriate time. Action taken. Abandoned family led a sinful life, called out Narayana on his deathbed. Disobeyed Kashyapa Muni's advice, resulting in Yunis at an inauspicious time. Immediate consequences: family abandonment, sinful behavior, birth of two demonic sons, Hiranyakasha and Hiranyakashipu. Intervention: Vishnu Dutas appeared to save him. No direct intervention, consequences were immediate. Opportunities for redemptions: given a second chance, repented, transformed. Pacified by the knowledge that her sons would be killed by the Supreme Lord. So final outcome: transformed, his wife went to Haridwar and engaged in spiritual practice. Sons were ultimately killed and liberated by the Supreme Lord. Impact of action: primarily affected his immediate family, had severe consequences for the entire universe. Okay. The lesson learned: utilize second chance for transformation. Importance of timing and respecting guidance from great souls. To commit a mistake is not wrong. To take the opportunity of transformation and to make a commitment not to repeat the sin. That is the important principle. The Lord does not appear when the Brahmanas become angry at someone, because the wrath of a Brahmana is sufficient in itself. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. So here in Diti's case, even though Kashyapa Muni has warned, Diti disobeyed Kashyapa Muni's advice. And here what Gauranga Prabhu has said is that you need to respect guidance coming from great souls. Otherwise, the consequences can be even more severe. And so for us also, the importance of, one is doing aparadha, but also the Vaishnava aparadha, and then, how we engage with, spiritual people or souls that are realized is very, very important, because the consequences of that can be also multiplied. So this was just a short comparison. I thought it was an interesting, comparison that Gauranga Prabhu has presented in his. You can Google it up also. It's not in this format, but it's in a more kind of a story format. He has written it. So, but I thought it was quite interesting, because both had similar actions, but the reactions were very different. Right. So for us as sadhakas and as practicing, Krishna conscious and devotees right now, there are key takeaways from these two episodes that we need to keep in mind. So what is the impact of actions? I think that is one thing, right? So the impact of actions, lust-driven actions will have severe consequences. Let's keep that very clearly in mind. And we are aware of it. We are seeing it also in this Kali Yuga, which will affect both the individual and can affect others. Now it can affect only a few people, or it can affect so many more people also. Ajamila's actions were mainly affected his family. We saw that these actions had universal consequences. Now we need to exercise responsibility when we are in the association with great souls. So closer association with great souls increases the responsibility on us for upstanding our own behavior. Missteps in such association can have far-reaching and severe consequences. Please keep that in your mind. Opportunities for transformation are always there, but when we get these opportunities, please grab it with both hands. As much as committing a mistake isn't wrong, doesn't mean that we should try and commit a mistake. But more importantly, failing to transform and correct them again and ensuring that these sins are not getting repeated again in the future is more important. As Prabhupada says, he uses this analogy of you commit sins through the week, go on a Sunday, go to the church, make a confession, and then again from Monday onwards, again you start committing those sins again. That is extremely wrong. Atonement means you are not going to repeat it again. So in Ajamila's case, he repented, he transformed himself, he showcased the power of sincere repentance through that. So that is when actually his real Krishna consciousness started, after that incident. Keep this in mind, that lust is it can influence you. That is how powerful Maya is. It can overwhelm your judgment. In Ajamila's case also, he was bewildered. And once he was bewildered, he didn't know what to do, right? So we, as sadhakas, practicing sadhakas, we have to be extremely vigilant at our end. There's a need for us to be super vigilant, right? And we have to exercise self-control. So, and most importantly is prayers. So we need to ensure that we continue to pray hard and pray sincerely and shout out loud and call out the Lord's names whenever we have the chance. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. With that, I'll stop my class, Prabhu. I'll stop sharing here. I'll request anyone who has please forgive me for any thing that I've strayed from the but thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. Please share your comments and any questions you have. Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, one fundamental question, Prabhu. When somebody circumstantially fall down because of Maya, though they are devotees, practicing devotees, how Krishna actually give a protection from the circumstances? Of course, one way is to look at association, devotional service, chanting, getting immersed in Krishna consciousness. But in Kali Yuga, there is always a possibility of getting distracted to many things. So in case of any such circumstantially fallen happens, how Krishna gives protection? That is one question that I have, Prabhu. Secondly, the two use cases that you have compared, I think second one, Hiranyakasipu, Hiranyaksha, seems to be by design, by Supreme Lord. But I'm wondering how we will be able to differentiate what is by design by Krishna and what is circumstantial. I'm sorry, Prabhu, if I'm mixing up two.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. So the first question, Prabhu, your question was that, if we are, in Kali Yuga, Prabhu, we are all, we are suspect to fall down also, Prabhu. Because the power of Maya is so much, it's so strong that we will face those situations. At least I face those situations, Prabhu. I think what we need to keep in mind is the intent. So the intent is one. And the second one, I think what we just touched upon in that final reflections, takeaways, was the atonement, right? What are we doing after that? The fact that if we are, after doing something that we think is not appropriate or incorrect, right? If our consciousness is then pricking us, that itself is a good sign. And then what are we trying to do later to atone from that, right? Are we going to repeat it again? So I had the fortune of interacting with Rompad Swami Maharaj over here. He was here in Singapore recently. And both Charanya and I, we had the opportunity to just speak with him for around 15-20 minutes. And one of the questions that I asked him was that, how do you, like we were actually basically discussing my daughter, right? Like, she wants to play. Sometimes, we're trying to bring her by force also sometimes to sit in the Bhagavatam classes and stuff. Sometimes we have to do that. So he said that, don't force. You have to dial it down. He used this word, dialing it down. And this is what I want to share with you, is dialing it down. We have to dial down on our anarthas. You will not be able to immediately switch it off, right? Prabhupada uses the analogy of the fan, which when you try and switch off the fan keeps rotating for some time. It slows down, but it's still moving before it comes to a stop. So for us to expect that we'll be able to dial down all the anarthas immediately from level 5 to level 0 on the next day might not happen. A more important point is the intent behind, and second most important is that we are reflective of it, we are realizing it, we are making an effort to dial it down. That is one part. Now the second question, Prabhu, on the Ditis, right? You said that it is by Krishna's design. Everything is happening by his design, Prabhu. So nothing is happening out of our own design. We are mere players. The purpose, reason why we have come into this material world is we wanted to lord it over matter. We wanted to become the supreme personality of God. We wanted to be the proprietors, controllers. We wanted to lord it over. And God is so merciful. He says that, okay, Baba, you go into this quarantine environment, you lord it over. Okay, I will come with you personally as a Paramatma. And I will sanction things according to whether this will impede you or whatever, but everything finally keep in mind is a process of purification. So everything is happening by his design. Nothing is happening which is not his design. Everything is happening. Not a blade of grass can move without his sanction. The fact that I am speaking today, I'm raising my hands, I'm putting my hands like this, putting it down is also happening because of Krishna's approval. It will not happen without his approval. So number one, let's keep in mind that everything happens by his design. So in both the cases, it has happened by his design. I think the important point was the consequences that both the reactions in both the cases were very dissimilar. The actions were similar, but the reactions were different. And the reactions were different because of the context in which those actions had happened. So in the second place, a great sage like Kashyapa Muni was disobeyed, and which had far-reaching consequences. And therefore, the emphasis on how we conduct ourselves responsibly in the association of great souls. So I don't know, Prabhu, if I answered your question. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Anyone else? Prabhuji and Mataji, anyone else has any questions? If not, then we can conclude the class. It's 11:15. I wish you all a very spiritually surcharged Sunday. Let's keep chanting, let's keep praying, and let's be most vigilant as is needed, because Maya is always under the prowl. Okay. Next class, we'll further see about how this story further evolves. It's a very interesting story and has a lot of relevance in today's life for each one of us. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Hare Krishna. Panchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyev cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta koti vaishnavvrinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat pranam.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu. Dandavat pranam, Prabhu.